Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink I have in sample form. It's by the brand K.W.Z of Poland. It's one of their non-iron gall ones. Gray Plum, which is a very, very dark purple. And the two pens I used to test it were these. This is a Pilot 78G with a broad nib, but all the 78G broads and double broads are actually just stubs. So, and I also use this JinHao X450, and I love my X450s because they are all pretty broad and pretty wet, and this one definitely is. Okay, I wanted to find some inks that were comparable. I don't know how I did on that front because this ink is pretty unique, as you can probably see. It's a very dark purple. It's gray. It has a lot of gray in it, but then you might see through here, there's actually a good bit of like red peeking through. So yeah. So here's Gray Plum, and here's Blue Upon the Plains of Abraham, which is definitely more blue, but also has some of those like hints of red. Except my camera's doing weird things and not showing the red today. That's worrisome. Here's Noodler's Violet, which is definitely just more violet. K.W.Z's Iron Gall Gummy Berry, which is actually fairly similar. Like if you sort of found the blended medium between all the parts of this, you'd get something kind of similar to Gummy Berry, but this is an Iron Gall ink. And Diamine Damson, which is also a very dark, sort of dusky purple, but yeah, not quite the same. So there you go. There's the comparables. Ooh. Let's check out the chromatography. Now, here's the chromatography as you're supposed to do it. This is a very bright blue, but it's not that bright. Yeah, that's a little more accurate. Anyways, you can see where the initial drop was put, and you get this very intense, I don't know, is there such thing as like a pastel maroon? Yeah, so very solid, and then you get into this like more actual maroon through here, and then this very bright turquoise up at the top. And here's where I let it dry, which is not how you're supposed to do it, but pretty much the only difference is that dot at the bottom got darker, and you get, I don't know, some resisty kind of streaks through there. That's about it. And I wanted to see what this ink could sort of hold up against. The water really broke it up. In fact, this ink was pretty easy to clean out of my pen with just water. Not a lot of trouble there, although it did leave some pinkishness behind. 1/3 bleach solution turned it this very strange, almost like menthol toothpaste greenish blue. Ammonia pen flush started to break it up, but honestly, with how well water did, I don't think you'd need to use pen flush, judging by this. And then hydrogen peroxide, I don't know, it did something weird. It kind of broke it up, kind of moved it around, but meh. Alright, on to the paper test. Top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. Yeah. Yeah, you might be able to tell, compared to this, or even this, and here you can really see the red coming through in the shading. But anyways, the writing is very gray and very dark, but actually it's quite lovely. It has this very soft shading. It's not severe. It's yeah, it's gradual. It's very pretty. It is a bit wet. I don't know if I'd say 6.5 out of 10. It's probably more like a 6 most of the time. But yeah, so that 78G took 17 seconds to dry, and the Broad and Wet JinHao took 29. And you don't really get sheen, but it almost starts to shine a bit, but it's like a hazy sort of matte shine. But yeah, anyways, very well behaved, no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, all good in that regard. It did make a bit of a mess in the water test, as you can see. Now those dots from the JinHao are definitely there. They're definitely noticeable. You can tell that something was there, and it did dye the page, but not the best results. I mean, that test is completely gone, but yeah. Next up is Fabriano. It's 85 grams per square meter. And again, we see that this is really kind of a hazy gray with hints of purple, which actually is exactly the kind of purple I like. I like my sort of dusty, dusky purples. But yeah, that 78G took 13 seconds to dry. The Broad and Wet JinHao took 26. But I hope this will come up on camera. It doesn't really want to show, but can you see that it's like it's almost like a matte shine around the wettest parts of that scrubby? Anyways, I hope that comes up. But anyways, yeah, again, I'm really enjoying this shading. Oddly, it's not quite as obvious in the X450 just because it puts down so much more ink. But yeah, anyways, as you can see, very well behaved, no bleed, no feather, no spread. See, maybe there's a bit of echo, but I'm not sure I would call this echo. Yeah, but yeah. And so the water test, kind of similar results. It's pretty gone. It dyed the page. Again, the dots from the X450 are pretty noticeable, and parts of the writing from the X450 are fairly noticeable, but the 78G is pretty gone. So yeah. Next up is Rhodia. 80 grams per square meter. As you can see, that 78G took 15 seconds to dry. The Broad and Wet JinHao took 26, which kind of... the dry times are kind of long, but not unacceptably long, but they are on the long side, if that makes any sense. But yeah, here, again, we almost get a bit of this like hazy something in the wettest parts of the scrubby. And again, we have this very gentle sort of soft shading in the writing. But yeah, it's a very dark, dusky, gray purple. So it's not going to like leap out at you, the color. So if you work in an office environment where you are not explicitly told that you can't use colored ink, but you don't want to push it, this one might be a good one. But yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread. I see there's some echo, but I really don't see any, but that could be because the quadrilateral paper is hiding it a bit. I'm not entirely sure. Now, this water test is kind of the results we've seen so far. Those dots from the 78G, pretty clear. Parts of the, or not the 78G, the X450, pretty clear. Parts of the writing from the X450 are pretty clear, but 78G is getting pretty hazy, but it did dye the page, so... Next up is Tomoe River paper, which is known for drawing out dry times and shading and sheen, and since it's so thin, it does tend to have a bit of an echo problem, and with how dark this ink can get, that is something that if you're very sensitive to echo, that you might want to be aware of. Here in the scrubby, I did lay it on pretty thick because I was trying to make sure I could get some of that not quite sheen on camera. Speaking of that not quite sheen, I really hope you can see this. Because again, it's like a hazy matte shine, but it's there. It's sort of just like a black color. It's not like it's going to start flashing red or something, but yeah, anyways. Here, dry times were definitely drawn out. That 78G took 21 seconds, and that Broad and Wet JinHao took 38. So, I don't know, whatever's in this ink, you gotta have patience to use it on this paper. But if you do use it on this paper, I hope this comes through. See this really soft shading? It's gentle, it's not severe, it's not, I don't know, I don't have the words for it, but it's gradual. But yeah, quite well behaved, of course. It's almost impossible to make something bleed or feather or spread on Tomoe River unless you're really pushing it. But yeah, such a pretty sort of dusty gray purple. Now, water test. Tomoe River loves to let ink slide away when you add water, and it kind of did. The advantage is it didn't really dye the page as noticeably as in the previous test, but also I feel like you can see just how light the ink got. I mean, that 78G up at the top is pretty hard to read. The X450 water is pretty clear. The test is a little patchy. And the dots, again, are really clear. But that's kind of it. Now for the next 3 tests, I only use the 78G except to write the name. And this is the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. And it is definitely going to earn that title because, man. So let's look at this spread for a second. Look at how much that line width increased. Yeah, and it got kind of woolly. You see that texture in the scrubby? You don't have any more shading. Here, because it's so absorbent, like the absorbent papers tend to sort of futz with color, it almost looks just like a black that wasn't trying too hard. So if you need to use this in an office environment on lots of copier paper, this could be cool. But yeah, it took 3 seconds to dry, which makes sense, because, and actually I wish I had mentioned this before, this is a very saturated ink. It never looks weak or watery or thin. It's got a lot of ink in it, which in a way kind of explains this slightly longer dry time. But yeah, it, I don't know, I say it looks more noticeably purple on here. I don't agree, except in the scrubby, maybe. Well, anyways, maybe it like aged grayer or something. I don't know. Anyways, but there are some feathers. Like, okay, let's look at the word feathering. See the bottom of the first E in feathering? That's kind of about it. Maybe at the top of the G at the end of the word. That's actually kind of impressive. Like, there's not a ton of feathering, and usually this paper loves to feather. But we do have this, which is problematic. Okay, granted that was the X450 right there, but we're getting a lot of little dots coming through. And actually, if you notice, like, so this is, what is this? Significant. So, like, dot of the I, another I, another I. It's everywhere that there's a dot. Here's a dot, dot, dot. The eyes of a smiley face. So that was kind of interesting, but worrisome. Now, absorbent papers tend to draw the ink in, make it harder to wash out. That's pretty much what happened here. It did dye the page a bit, and it did sort of start to feather and explode, but if you had to recover that, I think you could. Next up is Mead Notebook Paper, which is actually physically thinner, and it's pretty cheaply made. And yet here, I feel like here is probably the most noticeable shade of purple we've seen yet. I wish I could get these scrubbies right next to each other. You see? It's much more noticeably purple. Here. See? So that's interesting. But yeah, you don't really have any shading here. And lately this paper has been feathering like a lot. And yet here it's really not so bad. We don't get a ton. We do get a little. But not a ton. Like, you see that second P in purple, or the I in feathering. And then the rest of the word looks just fine. So that's kind of curious. But anyways, 2 seconds to dry. And then we don't really get any bleed or even near bleed. That was me scratching through the paper with the stub. You can kind of tell because it's just a straight line. But yeah, we get some echo. But that's about it. We don't get anything even close to coming all the way through. We just, like, you see, it's just the light. But anyways, this paper does tend to freak out when you add water, and that's kind of what happened here. What's cool is, like, you can see, it almost looks like blue flames just coming off of the words. But yeah, you can see that the purple, that lighter purple, at the center is actually pretty clear. If you had to recover that, I think you could. It wouldn't be the same color, but if it was important, if you had to recover that, I think you could. Now lastly is Moleskine Notebook Paper, which I hate because it is terrible, it is awful. It hates ink, which you can tell, because good lord, look at this. I mean, look at, first of all, the woolliness, just the woolliness, and then we get into the feathering. It's really like gross, like lumpy feathering. It's pretty nasty. It took 3 seconds to dry. Ugh. And it actually came through and like dotted the page below in a bunch of spots. Pretty much anywhere you see these really dark spots, is where it came through and began dotting the page below. So, something to be aware of. But I feel like that's mostly this paper. I mean, Mead Notebook Paper is unbelievably cheap and it's pretty well behaved on there. This stuff, I don't know. But also, look at this water test. I wish there was a way for me to like let you feel the texture of this, because it has gone completely weird. But yeah, anyways, what we see here is something we didn't see in any of the other tests. You can see the stuff at the center, which previously stayed pretty much the same and the blues started freaking out. No, this stuff feathered and exploded and it got hazy. I feel like I'm not wearing like I feel like I'm wearing an old prescription of glasses or someone else's glasses, because it's just so like it's blurry. So that's strange. Yeah. Ugh. Anyway, so there you go for your consideration. K.W.Z Gray Plum. If you're like me and you like a very dark, sort of dusky purple, this one's great. Behaved pretty well on Mead paper. Most people have something at least a little better than the world's worst copier paper, so it might do pretty okay on there. Premium papers, it did great. It has a very soft kind of shading. For such a saturated ink, it was very easy to clean out of my pens with just water. Yeah, it does have the K.W.Z smell, so if you're like me and unbelievably, like almost inhumanly sensitive to smell, something to consider. But yeah, lovely dark purple. Yeah, if you need something that, if you work with people who don't pay a lot of attention, you could probably use this in an office and people wouldn't ask too many questions. But yeah, Gray Plum is a very accurate name. So, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.